Hi guys. Quick check. Quick check for clock watching and passage 2, telling time and location with the sun. So we're reading 2 passages and answering, I think there's 7 questions. So make sure you have your paper in front of you. Make sure your name is on it, and we'll go from there. Okay. All right. So I'm going to read it with you. Again, it is kind of a funky copy, so just read it with me. You should be fine. Okay. All right. Passage 1 is clock watching. It says thousands of years ago. This is by Sarah Stacher. Number 1, thousands of years ago, people didn't care what time it was. They spent most of their days hunting and gathering food. A schedule would have been silly. 9 o'clock hunt, 10 o'clock gather. But to survive, our ancestors did need to keep track of day, night, and seasons. They looked to the sun, moon, and stars for signs of these cycles in nature. Half past candle. Eventually, people learned that sun could also be used to measure hours in a day. After 4,000 years ago, somebody shoved a stick, about 4,000 years ago, somebody shoved a stick in the ground and made a neat discovery. The stick's shadow moved as the sun's position in the sky changed from sunup to sundown. People in ancient Egypt, Greece, and China made shadow clocks or sundials in all shapes and sizes. But sundials weren't perfect. At night or on cloudy days, they didn't work. So how did people tell time when there was no sunlight? Clocks made of candles, oil lamps, and incense sticks worked just fine without the sun, measuring the time in which a certain amount of wax, oil, or incense burned. Water clocks were popular too, dripping the minutes away, leaving less water in a vessel as time passed. However, there was a problem with clocks that burned and dripped. They only showed how much time had passed. Suppose a friend said, "I'll meet you when half a candle melts." To be on time, you'd both have to have the same size candle and light them together. As town and cities grew, travel and trade between countries increased. There were lots of new jobs to do, and people needed to be in the same place at the same time to get them done. The old clocks were no longer good enough since they didn't let everyone share the correct time of day. So that's passage 1, clock watching. Passage 2 is telling time and location with the sun. Although ancient people believed the sun revolved around the earth, we now understand it's the other way around. Early explorers knew Earth's rotation on its axis and revolving path around the sun could give them a pretty accurate way of knowing the time and their location. The Earth is always in motion around the sun, turning on its axis and revolving in its orbit around the sun. Therefore, any shadows the sun casts upon the ground are going to change over the course of a day and throughout the year. Just poking a stick into the ground and examining its shadow can't give you an accurate time of day. The first sundials that were accurate used an angled piece of wood to account for the curvature of the Earth. The shadow fell onto a chart that marked the hours of the day. Curvature, if you look down at the bottom, it's the fact of being curved or the degree to which something is curved. Even without a sundial, you can get a pretty good estimate of what time it is by using the sun's position. Find the position of the sun and be careful. All those warnings your mom has given about not looking directly at the sun are true. Studies have found that your eyes can sustain damage from the sun, so be sure you never look at it directly. If the sun is directly overhead, you're in luck. It's noon. If it's not noon yet, determine which direction is east by finding the horizon that the sun is closest to. If it's past noon, the sun will be closer to the western horizon. Divide the sky into 4 sections that are about equal. The halfway point should pass directly over your head. Note which of those quadrants the sun is in. Each of your quadrants represents about a 3-hour period. If the sun is in the first eastern quadrant, it's between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. If it's in the first western quadrant, it's between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. You can get closer still by estimating how far along in the quadrant the sun is. For example, halfway through the far quadrant, it will be about 7:30. You can also tell direction using the sun. Here's how. Push a stick that's about 3 feet long into the ground. Pick an area that's relatively flat and free of debris so the stick will cast a good shadow on the ground. Mark the spot where the top of the stick's shadow falls. You can use a stone, twig, or whatever's handy. This spot will be your marker for west. Wait about 15 minutes, then mark the tip of the stick's shadow again. Leave the original marker in place. This is your marker for east. When you draw a line connecting these two markers, you'll have a line that runs about east to west. If you position yourself with the east marker to your right and the west marker to the left, you'll be facing north and south will be behind you. I missed where it said quadrant. Quadrant is each of 4 parts of a plane sphere, space or body divided by 2 lines at right angles. Not sure. Oh, quadrants was in paragraph 12. All right, so here are the questions. Question 1, which sentence from passage 1 explains a problem of telling time with sundials? A, thousands of years ago, people didn't care what time it was. B, but to survive, our ancestors did need to keep track of day, night, and seasons. C, at night or in cloudy days, they didn't work. Or D, they only showed how much time had passed. Question 2, which 2 quotations? You have to pick 2 answers. Which 2 quotations from passage 1 help explain why the old clocks were no longer good enough? Which was in paragraph 6. Again, you have to pick 2 choices. People didn't care what time it was. Our ancestors did need to keep track of day, night, and seasons. Clocks made of candles, oil lamps, and incense sticks work just fine without the sun. There was a problem with clocks that burned and dripped. They only showed how much time had passed. To be on time, you both have to have the same size candle and light them together. Question 3, select 2 main ideas from passage 1. So once again, you have to select 2 answers from passage 1. People throughout history have been able to tell the seasons by looking at the daytime sky. Clocks made of candles could tell time by measuring how much wax had been burned. People need new types of clocks as civilizations grew and trade became important. Ancient humans were hunters and gatherers who did not care what time it was. In ancient times, people invented a way to measure time using the sun. Number 4, it says, read this sentence from passage 2. The earth is always in motion around the sun, turning on its axis and revolving in its orbit around the sun. What does revolving mean as it's used in this sentence? Moving around a central point. B, repeating again and again. C, turning around quickly. Or D, tilting to one side. Question 5, read this sentence from paragraph 10. Studies have found that your eyes can sustain damage from the sun, so be sure you never look at it directly. What does sustain mean as used in the sentence? A, preserve. B, prove. C, suffer. Or D, support. Question 6. Read these sentences from passage 2. Just poking a stick into the ground and examining its shadow can't give you an accurate time of day. The first sundials that were accurate used an angled piece of wood to account for the curvature of the earth. How do these sentences add to the description of the first sundials in paragraph 3 of passage 1? A, by showing how sundials used the sun to mark the seasons. B, by discussing how special sundials are used to figure out direction. C, by explaining how sundials led to the development of modern clocks. Or D, by describing how sundials were developed to measure time more accurately. And then the last question is question 7. How is the structure of passage 1 different from the structure of passage 2? A, passage 1 explains how time is measured. Passage 2 introduces a problem, then gives several different solutions. B, passage 1 compares and contrasts ways of keeping time. Passage 2 asks a question about clocks, then gives several possible answers. C, passage 1 describes ways of keeping time as they developed in history. Passage 2 provides steps for estimating time and direction using the sun. D, passage 1 states a problem with measuring time and gives several solutions. Passage 2 introduces a cause and gives several possible reasons for it. When you're done, make sure you've answered all your questions, turn them into the blue basket with your name on it, and you can go ahead and continue working on the rest of your mustards and ketchups.